This is Raythe from Raythe Reign. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Caden's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 127. The Power of Command.
We must get to Valerius and the others. The behemoth will kill them without us there.
Raziel roared. The black dragon's red eyes glowed like molten fire. Raziel was always huge, but somehow its wingspan seemed to increase, and the giant black body blotted out the sky.
My Larian will fight, and he will die,
Mephis cried. May will break herself upon the behemoth, Zippel shouted.
Tez will shield the others. He will perish,
Eldaron moaned. Kayla will be scarred by the behemoth's evil before her body is shredded by it, Lana wailed.
Anwar will throw himself into the battle by Valerius' side, Evren growled.
Esme will be right there beside them. She will give her life. She will give her everything, Scylla snarled. Jahara will stand firm. She will do all she can to protect everyone. She will fall, Zephyra whispered. The dragon spirits were all rising up, ready to fly back to the lair and exit the spirit realm and enter the human one. But Caden couldn't let them do it.
No!
Caden jumped up and motioned for Iolaire to come to him so that he could get on the white dragon's back. His spirit complied, even as he felt its confusion. The other dragon spirits glared at him, thinking he was being foolish or some such thing.
Iolaire and I will go, alone. We will be the only ones who go. You must remain here. What? Why?
Sulphurous smoke poured from Raziel's mouth.
Because you have to kill the behemoth here.
Caden got up on Iolaire's back and aimed his spirit towards the lair. You cannot kill it on Earth. Look around you. Remember what will happen if you do. The crater that stretched farther than the eye could see, and where nothing grew and never would again, met their silent gazes. Zephyra asked, You have a plan?
Iolaire and I are going to go back, Caden said. You may be brave, but you are the smallest of all of us, Mephis growled.
It is true, Lana flapped unhappily. No one doubts your heart or Iolaire's, Caden, but the behemoth is too strong for you. We all must go and make it come back here.
How? By hurting it so badly that all of Reach will be destroyed? Tens of thousands killed? No, that cannot happen. Caden shook his head.
What could you and Iolaire do to make the behemoth come back, if not fight it? Eldaron asked. Iolaire had turned his head around to look at Caden. It twittered in confusion. The other dragon spirits tilted their heads at him as if a different viewpoint would clear things up.
Mephis, Caden blinked. You, of all people, should understand.
Mephis frowned, but Zippel let out a smoky snort. Of course. You sent Mephis back to the spirit realm, Zippel cried, and Ilarion could not shift back for 24 hours. Iolaire's special gift. Exactly. On the nose, Zippel. Caden pointed to the red dragon. Understanding flooded Raziel's face.
You will do the same to the behemoth. You will send it back here.
Where you guys will destroy it, where it's safe, Caden nodded. Where no one can get hurt. Iolaire lifted its head and let out a burst of happy snow. Of course it realized what the plan was now. It had not even considered that gift. But it was perfect.
Do nothing else, Caden. Iolaire, do not let him be foolish, Raziel insisted. Use the gift. Do nothing else. Understood?
I promise, Raziel. Gift and done. I don't want to see that ugly mug more than that. But you guys, stay right here. I'm betting this crater is the behemoth's lair, Caden explained. Come on, Iolaire. We gotta fly fast. They were moving before Caden had gotten the words out. He leaned low against Iolaire's back and gripped the white dragon's scales as hard as he could. The air was rushing so fast over them that Caden's eyes were blurred with tears when he could open them at all. He had no idea where they were, but he trusted Iolaire with everything he was, so he just hunkered down, shutting his eyes tightly, and held on. Touching Iolaire was beyond a dream. Under any other circumstances, he would have simply treasured this moment. He would have even mourned the idea of it ending. Touching Iolaire was something he would never likely be able to do again. But even if he couldn't relish this as he otherwise would, and even as he hoped for their destination, he would remember every moment of it. "Love," Iolaire twittered. "Love you."
"I love you too, Iolaire. With everything I am," Caden told it.
He felt a rush of unbelievable love and peace and joy and emotions so pure and good that the tears he was shedding were no longer from the wind. His soul was seared by them and uplifted, and so much more. He couldn't have put it into words. He thought then that maybe Iolaire didn't use words often because they were simply too small to get across its meaning.
"I love you," Caden repeated. "Let's never be parted again."
Iolaire let out a high twitter of agreement and determination. They would never be parted again, no matter what. In moments, he felt the wind whistling over his head and body slow. He dared lift his head up and opened his eyes. They were landing on the ledge just outside of the lair. Iolaire practically sailed inside. Since the opening was big enough for Raziel, neither of them even had to duck their heads to get inside. Caden heard Landry shout before he saw her. "Iolaire? Caden, oh my God, you're just in time. The behemoth is there," Landry yelled. Caden saw her yelling and pointing towards the mirror.
Holy shit! Both her brothers were jumping up and down and staring wide-eyed too.
Jasper wasn't speaking, which was unusual. The fact that he was curled on the floor probably explained some of that, but even he was staring towards the mirror. Caden turned his head and gasped. The mirror showed the throne room. All of the dragon shifters were there, including him. His own nude body was laid tenderly on a couch. Esme was cradling his feet in her lap. In her other hand was a rifle that looked like it came off the set of Star Trek. Valerius wasn't on the couch, which Caden was a little surprised by, though he quickly saw the reason why. Valerius was by the doors of the courtyard. He too had a rifle. He too was nude. Caden's relief at seeing Valerius and the others apparently all right, despite Landry's words, was then swept away. Because looking down from the windows was the behemoth. It was glaring at Valerius, a hungry, ugly look upon its face. Those yellow eyes slid from Valerius to him and Iolaire. Those eyes widened. It hadn't expected to see him. Its gaze flickered over the mirror. No Raziel, no other dragons, just him and Iolaire. It grinned.
"Not so fast, you ugly bastard."
Then the behemoth roared. The windows all shattered. Glass rained down onto Valerius. All at once, Valerius leaped back and brought up an arm to shield his face from the falling glass. He brought the other arm up with the rifle. A few blue blasts exited the barrel and cut large scallops out of the throne room ceiling. Caden was deafened by the roar and swayed on Iolaire's back. He couldn't move. He couldn't think. All he could do was watch as the throne room doors of the courtyard seemed to explode. A massive claw thundered down onto the splintered wood. The behemoth had no magic breath, so it couldn't breathe death upon them. But the claw started to search inside. It swiped through the air. Valerius would have been raked, but Ilarion dove and grabbed him around the middle. The two of them rolled away. More blue laser bolts started to hit it from all directions. Every single dragon shifter had a rifle and was firing. Even Tez was in on it, though like Eldaron had suspected, he was trying to use himself as a shield for Kayla, and more of his shots went wide than anywhere near the behemoth. Anwar was right there in it, just as Everett had known he would be. He had the rifle against his shoulder and was aiming down the sight. The behemoth lowered its massive head so that it filled the doorway and tried to thrust it through. Anwar expertly shot the behemoth right in those yellow eyes. It roared again, but this time in pain and rage. Blinded, it pulled its head back, but reached in and tried to grab Anwar or anyone nearby. May leaped into action. She shot the claw just as it was about to curl around Anwar's lithe body. The behemoth jerked it back. This gave Anwar the chance to leap out of reach. Esme was crouched behind the couch. She had pulled Caden's seemingly lifeless body from the couch and was trying to drag it away from that questing claw. The claw ripped and shredded the part of the couch it could reach. Jahara and Kayla sent a round of covering fire before they launched themselves forward to help Esme get Caden's body out of the way. The behemoth saw what they were doing out of bloody, yellow eyes. It gave a toothy snarl and reached in again, going right for Caden's helpless form. Valerius and Ilarion screamed at the behemoth. They fired their weapons. They waved their hands above their heads. The behemoth let out another rage-filled roar that had dust and rock raining down from the throne room ceiling. It was distraction enough for the others to get Caden's body out of the way.
Did you know that you can get some of my gay romance books for free? Every month, I have at least one book free to download, right from Amazon, so you can easily read it on any device. But these books can only be free for 5 days at a time. If you don't want to miss out, just sign up for my mailing list, and I'll send you an email whenever there's a free book available. The link to the sign-up form is in the description down below.
Then the other doors exploded inwards, and the wise women joined the fight. Old and young, they were all there. They moved in front of the dragon shifters. They were using themselves as shields for the dragon shifters. The behemoth seemed to retreat for a moment. Its claws and head were not visible. But then, the massive tail swam into view. Things seemed to slow as that tail was slammed against the outside wall of the throne room. The blocks shuddered. They held, but some shifted inwards. Dust, stone, and dirt suffused the air. That tail came in for another slam. No, absolutely not. All of this had happened in moments where Caden was shocked and unable to move, but now he leaped off of Iolaire's back and towards the mirror. His arms were spread wide. He knew that this was what he had to do. Iolaire had shown him. He closed his eyes the moment his forehead hit the mirror. It was cold, freezing cold, like dipping his hand into a bowl of ice water. Colder than that, it seemed to seep into his very bones, his very soul. But of course, it was his soul going through. There was light, like dawn breaking upon the horizon, and a sense of great speed and vast distances being breached. But at the same time, it felt like a simple breath. Between one and the next, Caden went from the spirit realm to the human one. He opened his eyes and saw Esme, May, and Jahara's faces above his own. "Caden!" Esme gasped. "He's back!" May cried. "Of course he is," Jahara smiled. Without saying a word, Caden leaped up. His body was completely at his command. He felt Iolaire's strength within him mixed with his own. They were one again. They always would be. That tail was coming around once more. Time slowed. Valerius's head was turned towards him. Ilarion was beside Valerius. They were both firing out the windows at the behemoth, trying to hit it. The tail would most likely take out the wall. The throne room ceiling would come down on all of them. Caden leaped over the ruined couch. His mouth opened, but he knew this gift wouldn't work against the behemoth unless he was shifted. He had to stop that tail first. He was out the doors of the throne room into the courtyard, but only a foot or so. No room to shift. Iolaire would do what the tail was attempting to do, simply by coming into being. His arms stretched forward. Ice formed ahead of him in a wall, slowing the tail down, but not stopping it. Caden braced and reached within himself and Iolaire and drew out a greater ice power. Ice turn. That's what the tail looked like. It looked like it was made of glassy ice after he had used the power. A sculpture of a tail, not the real thing, but the behemoth was still moving. Forward momentum had taken over. That huge length of solid ice was going to crash right into him. Valerius's arms were around Caden, and he was pulling Caden back inside of the throne room. He landed on top of Valerius's nude body. The Black Dragon King then turned and tried to shield Caden with that body. But Caden used his much greater strength, at the moment, to keep Valerius right where he was as a tail smashed into the building and shattered. The scream from the behemoth was so shattering itself that Caden couldn't hear for long moments afterwards. His body was flattened on top of Valerius's. The other dragon shifters and the wise women were crouched down on the ground, weapons falling from nerveless fingers as they covered their ears. Foul blood flooded the courtyard, but not for long. The behemoth was taking off. No, we can't let it get away to hurt more people, Caden thought. Will hurt much death, Iolaire said. Yes, this is its endgame. We have to stop it, Iolaire. He got off of Valerius. He turned and looked down at that beloved face. He touched Valerius's cheek. His ears were still ringing, so he couldn't hear anything. He hoped Valerius, though, could. I've got to make it shift. I have to send it back to the spirit realm. The other dragons are waiting there to destroy it. Do you understand? Caden asked, his voice sounding blubbery and coming in and out to himself. Valerius caught his hand and looked up at him as if seeing something so treasured, but feared lost. Caden wasn't sure if he had heard. He hated leaving Valerius like this, but he had to. He kissed the Black Dragon King and got up. He raced out of the doors and shifted. To be in their dragon form again in this world felt so right. The only thing more right would have been to have Valerius and Raziel flying by their side. Soon. They were up in the air, their powerful wings beating effortlessly. All their fears he usually had about shifting and flying were gone. He was the White Dragon King. He and Iolaire were meant to be together. This was what he was meant to do. The behemoth had flown towards the mid. It wasn't headed out into the countryside, but clearly had decided to take out as many people as it could before it returned to the shifter realm and the justice awaiting it. They banked and headed after it. Their eyes caught sight of the bridge, though. His breath pulled in, and Iolaire gave out a cry of pain. Rose, Wally, and Marban were all huddled around a still figure. The figure was Shioni. Rose had her hand. Wally was patting her head. Marban was calling for help, ordering other shifters about as a born leader did. The cause of her stillness became clear, as there were hundreds of other still bodies. The horde, some of it anyways. Not all of the humans' forms shifted to make the behemoth. Was that because the other dragons were defeated and are still in the spirit realm? Iolaire did not know. They were all laid out on the bridge like a carpet. It reminded Caden sickly of images he had seen of Jonestown after the massacre there. He didn't say suicides because those people truly had no choice, most of them anyways. But those bodies were still alive. He could hear their heartbeats. Shioni had fought them, kept them away, but kept them alive. What has it cost her, Iolaire? What has it cost all of them? But he knew he couldn't focus on that now. For the behemoth let out a terrible, bone-rattling cry as it thundered downwards in more of a crash landing than true landing in Dragon Strike Square. It left a furrow of broken stone and earth in its wake. The end and the beginning, Iolaire told him. Yeah, we're ending this where we began it, Caden realized. But though the moon was out and he was now the White Dragon King, the square was just as filled as it had been for the anniversary. They had come out of their homes and flooded into the square because of the excitement, wanting to know what was happening up at High Reach, trying to get a look. Once more, they had come with their cameras and smiles and laughter. But no more for some of them. The broken stone and earth that marked the behemoth's crash landing, it wasn't just those inert materials. It was bone and blood and people too. People dead and dying, people crushed and smeared across the cobblestones, people missing limbs and screaming for help, people who wouldn't last that much longer. The behemoth was sitting there like some giant, horrendous spider with its still bleeding stump of a tail tracking him with its yellow eyes. In both of its clawed forelimbs, it held half a dozen people. They were screaming and beating against the scaly fingers helplessly. The behemoth was smiling. It would show him just how much pain it was in by killing innocents and making him feel every one that he had failed to save. The behemoth thought that he would come at it with ice breath, or frost, or gale. It thought that he and Iolaire had simply made it first through the mirror. It didn't understand why they were the only ones here. And Caden was fine with that.
Iolaire, now, Caden commanded. Send it back, now!
The cry that had turned the great dragon Mephis back into its slender man form erupted from their mouth. The sound filled the air, echoed against the stone, caused thunder to rumble in the clouds. The behemoth blinked. For a second, that was all that happened. Caden felt fear reach up to strangle them both as he and Iolaire sent another command to the behemoth. For that's what this was. It was command. It sent a spirit back to its realm. You will leave this plane. You will go. And then the behemoth's body started to jiggle, almost as if it were made of jello, and someone was shaking the bowl to make it move. The behemoth's jaws opened as if to object to this unseemly jiggling, but the jiggling flesh turned to blurring flesh, turned to flesh that was there and not there, like a negative image. And then the behemoth was gone. The claws holding the people were gone too, and they were falling. He and Iolaire darted in and just managed to catch the humans before they hit the ground and joined the other dead and dying. He felt a welling of triumph. They had done it. Iolaire twittered and let out a gout of snow. The people in their claws were shouting their thanks and crying with relief too.
The other dragons are on it now. They'll destroy the behemoth and this will be over, Caden cried.
It was then, though, that Caden realized the shouts of happiness of the crowd had turned to screams of terror. He thought at first that it was the horror of seeing the dead and injured people that had been obscured by the behemoth's form, but no, these were fresh screams, and Caden suddenly realized why. The horde, the part that made up the behemoth, was still there, and it still had the power to kill and destroy through them.
I hope you're enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. Dragon's Reign is free for you to enjoy, but not free for us to make. There is a whole team working with me for audio editing, artwork, graphic design, and custom music. Most YouTube channels and podcasts have sponsors and take ads, but because of the kind of content we make, we can't run ads or get sponsors. Instead, we have other ways you can support me and the team behind this gay romance audiobook. One easy way is to buy or borrow my books from Amazon. They are all gay romance set in alternative worlds with vampires or shifters and other magical beings. You may not know that even if you borrow books with your Kindle Unlimited subscription at Amazon, they are free for you, but they still earn us money. The books are published under the name Ex Aratare, which actually means Raythe in Romanian. And if you love audiobooks, you can get professionally narrated versions of every one of my books on audible.com. The link to my author page is in the description below, as well as to the first book of the series I think you'll really like. Thank you so much for your support. People like you enable me and the team to keep writing these stories of gay romance, magic, monsters, and true love, and producing this very fun podcast for everyone. Thank you.